weekend lockdown gets locked in at 9 o'clock tonight. Hello, I'm Julian Reid, and we are here with you live once again. And yes, we are in lockdown again this weekend, beginning at 9 o'clock tonight, and it will continue until 5 a.m. Monday. Now, health authorities have said that this method has proven to limit the spread of COVID-19 and will go a long way in preventing more Bahamians from getting the illness. But of course, we have to comply with the directives and the guidelines. Well, we'll have more on that coming up. But first, the statistics from here and around the world. Yesterday, you may have heard the statistics. The ones for today are not out yet, but up to yesterday, 54 cases, 9 people recovered, 895 people in quarantine, and 9 deaths from coronavirus. Throughout the region, the Dominican Republic still having the most cases, 4,126 cases, 200 deaths. 215 people have recovered there. Jamaica, 143 cases, 5 deaths, with 25 people recovering. Trinidad and Tobago, 114 cases, 8 deaths, 20 people have recovered. Barbados, 75 cases, 5 deaths, 15 people have recovered. And in Haiti, 43 cases, 3 deaths, 0 recoveries there. But it's all part of the global perspective where 2,219,164 people have been confirmed to have the virus. There have been 149,884 deaths, and 560,912 people have recovered. Well, U.S. President Donald Trump's guidelines for opening up America again outlined 3 phases for states to gradually ease their lockdowns. He promised governors they would be handling the process themselves with help from the federal government. Mr. Trump has suggested some states could reopen this month. New York is unlikely to be one of them, as 600 deaths were reported in New York overnight. Now, here are the overall stats in the United States. 681,078 cases with 35,371 deaths. 58,101 people have recovered. Spain, 188,068 cases, 19,478 deaths. 74,797 people have recovered. Italy, 172,434 cases with 22,745 deaths. 42,727 people have recovered. Well, France, Germany, and the UK follow. Germany, however, now says that its outbreak is under control. Each virus carrier is infecting less than 1 other person on average. Meantime, China denies covering up the Wuhan outbreak where the pandemic began, despite a revised death toll. That death toll in Wuhan by nearly 50% is an increase of 1,290 new deaths. The Chinese economy, meanwhile, shrinks for the first time in decades due to the impact of the virus. Well, yesterday we had a press conference from the Ministry of Health, and here's a little bit of what was said during that press conference.
Although we might have more cases, when you test more, you identify more cases. But what we're looking at, what we think is critical, is that we don't have very sick cases that overwhelm our health facilities. And we also identify folks and save lives. And that is one of the reasons why we are targeting the elder care grouping as a priority group, because we're looking at projections everywhere, all over the world, and we see that this group is particularly vulnerable. So I'm not able to give you what the projected timetable, but if we're looking at 66 days out, that's mid-May. If we look at what we might achieve, we truly hope it's under the less than 160.
7 out of these 9 persons who died had comorbidities or underlying illnesses. 4 out of the 9, or 44.4% of these patients were obese. 3 out of the 9, or 33% of the cases suffered from high blood pressure. 2 out of the 9, or 22%, experienced asthma. and 1 out of 9, or 11%, of the cases suffered from either sleep apnea, high lipids in the blood, kidney failure, and diabetes. There are 5 males and 4 females. 1 of the deceased is from Bimini, 5 from New Providence, and 2 from Grand Bahama. My fellow Bahamians, it's a fact that as of April 16th, our COVID-19 confirmed deaths are 6.4 times more likely to have comorbidities or underlying medical conditions. It is confirmed that although rapid tests give faster results at cheaper prices, they are often inaccurate. Since all of the many types of these tests have not yet been internationally validated, the Ministry of Health is only now exploring this method and is not using it as a confirmatory test at this time. Once our validation process is completed, and if these tests are found to correlate with our gold standard RT-PCR method, wider screening for COVID-19 at the community level will commence. There are 10,000.
That was the Health Minister, Dr. Dwayne Sands. Well, it's globally agreed that lockdowns help contain the virus, stopping community spread. Well, Betty Thompson-Moss spoke to the police commissioner about the lockdown that's going to happen in just a few hours.
The Bahamian Society is preparing for another weekend lockdown. The emergency protocol will once again be closely monitored by the Royal Bahamas Police Force. As the clock ticks, Commissioner Paul Roll is giving this assurance.
We are going to be setting up our roadblocks again, and we'll be stopping everybody. And I want people to understand that during a lockdown, which means that nobody should be on the road, and it is really in the hand of the Commissioner of Police to ensure that persons that are on the road have legitimate reason to be on the road.
If you must move around, the required documents will once again be necessary to present to an officer.
We are looking for no confrontation from anybody. We want to keep the Bahamian people safe, and I want to commend my officers for the good job that they have been doing, the sacrifices they continue to make. We've been out there around the clock to make sure that everybody are safe during these most difficult periods.
Now, while those checkpoints generally went without incidents, allegations were made against officers.
I received 2 complaints from members of the public regarding the conduct of officers and the way officers had reacted with them. And where we find that persons in breach, we'll be taking the disciplinary action against them. We try to encourage them not to react, but we also ask members of the public to be considerate and just simply answer the questions and not to aggravate the officer in any way.
The Commissioner of Police also had to give permission for special flights into Abaco during the 5-day lockdown and an emergency mailboat movement, but he says investigations are underway into an illegal flight.
And I met with the persons from the U.S. Embassy, and I lodged a complaint where a charter came in, aircraft came in from Fort Lauderdale, flew into Grand Bahama, was not authorized to land, and they still went ahead and land, picked up persons, and returned to Fort Lauderdale. That matter is being investigated right now by the FAA and the local authorities here in the Bahamas.
Now, during the current 24-hour curfew, threats and arrests were made.
You don't threaten your police, and certainly I'm not going to sit by and allow anybody to threaten me, my officers, or the institutions in this country. I've had a couple of those. We've taken persons into custody, and I encourage people, don't do things like that, because if you do it, we are going to take action against you, and we are a society based on laws.
The new Commissioner of Police is also making this appeal to the wider Bahamian society.
There are some people who know that their loved ones have guns, and I'm going to ask them to put down the guns. If they want to bring the guns in, they can come and bring the gun. I'll be more than happy to take their gun from them in a voluntary manner, or the same if they want to not give it to us in a voluntary manner, I'll be happy to do that too. But we are going to ensure the safety of all, including the criminals. We'll ensure their safety, even if it has to be in Foxhill.
For the morning edition, I'm Betty Thompson-Moss.
We've got more for you right after this.
The Ministry of Health is working to ensure the safety of the Bahamian people. Help us minimize the risk that coronavirus poses to citizens, residents, and visitors by following these 5 easy steps. Step 1. Wet your hands with clean water. Apply soap and lather for 20 seconds by rubbing them together. Include the top of your hands between your fingers and under your fingernails. Rinse your hands under clean water, then dry them with a paper towel or air dry them. Remember to wash your hands before and after eating, preparing a meal, changing a diaper, or caring for the sick, and always after using the bathroom, touching money, shaking hands, or taking out the trash. Step 2. Cough and sneeze in your elbow or upper sleeve, not in your hands, not in the air. Or you can cover your nose and mouth with a tissue when you cough or sneeze. Put your used tissue in the trash bin when you're finished. Remember to wash your hands with soap and clean water after you cough or sneeze. Also, remember never to spit on the ground, roads, or in open spaces. Step 3. Ensure that raw meat is properly handled and cooked thoroughly. Step 4. Avoid sharing drinking glasses, eating utensils like spoons and forks, or sharing personal items such as toothbrushes and towels. Germs can live on surfaces we touch, so wipe and disinfect surfaces where germs can live, and keep your surroundings clean. Step 5. Avoid close contact with anyone showing symptoms of respiratory illness, such as coughing or sneezing. Should you or anyone you know feel that you have been exposed to the coronavirus, contact the surveillance unit of the Ministry of Health immediately. To reach us, call 502-4776, 502-4790, or 502-4737. We want Bahamians and those that live with and visit us to remain safe from the coronavirus. To do this, we need the help of each and every one of you to follow the simple steps we have shared. Let's stay safe, Bahamas.
COVID-19 continues to impact the Bahamas and the world.
The Ministry of Health has confirmed 5 cases of COVID-19 in the Bahamas.
ZNS Network is here to keep you informed on this growing pandemic.
We are in a race against time.
With team coverage, hourly updates, news, and special reports with information that is important to you. ZNS Network is your best choice for COVID-19 coverage. No other station covers the Bahamas better.
Welcome back. Well, we don't know when this new culture of lockdowns will come to an end because of COVID-19, but when they do, the tourism minister is encouraging that we should spend our money right here in the Bahamas. That means traveling to other islands. He spoke about domestic tourism in this soundbite here.
We are going to have to develop, as we are with other light industries, we have to develop our domestic economy. We have to, if people are afraid to travel overseas, travel in your own country, go back and visit your family. Obviously, when our surge is done with. So we have to be creative in getting money to circulate and getting some sort of tourism off the ground. We obviously need to bring in foreign currency. We obviously need to bring as many foreign visitors as we can to the country to improve our economic situation. As it relates to domestic travel, I'm sure the numbers will be down. And market forces will determine lowering of prices in order to allow people to travel to try to build up traffic. But we have to figure out how a business can operate, a hotel, a restaurant, in this new norm.
Well, Grand Bahama's tourism industry has suffered blow after blow. But how are hotels doing now with COVID-19 and after Dorian? Shishina Rolf-Harkison has more.
Businesses in most countries across the world have come to a halt due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and it is no different here in the Bahamas. Many hotels across the country have had to close their doors, and in some instances, some Bahamians employed at those hotels lost their jobs. Here on Grand Bahama, some hotels are still open for business, but there are limitations. At the Pelican Bay Resort, General Manager Magnus Alnebeck says, at this time, there are only 3 rooms occupied at the resort, and those occupants are corporate guests.
Those guests are all well. We are not taking bookings unless it is that type of guest. It is somebody who needs to be here for essential work. That is the type of bookings we are taking. And obviously, Sabor and Bones is closed. We are doing some limited takeout from Sabor. And doing that in accordance to demand and obviously following all rules and protocol that the government has put in place for us.
He says cleaning efforts increased throughout the resort, and they are now taking this time to prepare for when the country reopens.
We have basically shut down 3 buildings totally. We have taken the opportunity of doing some work that is normally very difficult to do when the hotel is open. We have, for example, flooded the whole hotel with pest control spraying. We have shut down our cooling towers and done some serious maintenance and delining of those. So we are doing the work that we are allowed to do in making sure that the hotel will be as ready as possible when we will be able to.
Bell Channel Inn is still open, but only for guests who were staying at the hotel before the emergency orders were put into effect.
We have only 10% occupancy, so they're still, but we are not taking new guests in. We don't really feel that it's safe for the staff here to go and clean the rooms and do the laundry. So we want to limit the exposure. So it's only 10% occupancy.
Manager Lisbeth Knowles says their restaurant is still open for business, but for takeout only, and persons can call in their order.
We'll call them when it's ready. We will ask them how they will pay, credit card or cash, and we will bring the change or the credit card machine down to the car. They pull up in front of the lobby, and we bring them the food to the car.
Over at the Taino Beach Resort, according to an employee, there are no guests and the resort is closed. The Royal Islander Hotel occupancy level is at 17% and is open to the public, but persons must have all of the necessary protective gear. Management says the hotel is also doing their part to ensure that cleaning is done around the clock. Now, we also spoke with an employee at the Old Bahama Bay Resort who says they are closed and do not have any guests at this time. Italia Hall, ZNS Network News.
Thank you, Italia. Well, how do we jumpstart the economy after COVID-19? Earlier this week, the Progressive Liberal Party's deputy leader launched an economic recovery plan, and he joins us live. Mr. Chester Cooper, good afternoon.
Hi, Julian.
Yes, Mr. Cooper. Well, first of all, we heard the IMF use the word depression, and the Economic Intelligence Unit the words double recession. Now, the managing director of the International Monetary Fund, Kristalina Georgieva, says it could even be worse than that. We're projecting 170 countries to see income per capita shrinking during 2020, she says, which represents 80% of the atlas of the world. Now, she says it's part of a 3% dive in the world GDP for 2020, creating a global recession we have not seen in our lifetimes. But she says that might not be the end of it. Now, Mr. Cooper, if her words are realized, how much worse could it get for the Bahamas?
Well, this is a significant crisis, Julian. I believe that what we are seeing so far is the beginning of what's to come, and I anticipate not being a prophet of doom, but we could see it worsen before it gets better. The IMF predicts a negative 3% global downturn. It may not be wise to use when the world sneezes, we catch the cold under the current circumstance. But certainly that is what is happening with the very open economy that we have here. Keeping in mind that before the crisis, we experienced Hurricane Dorian. We had very little headroom. We continue to have very little headroom. We saw Standard & Poor's downgrade our economy. Moody's has given that indication that they're likely to do the same thing. So these are perilous times, unprecedented. It poses a significant threat to our economy and our way of life. Certainly, it's something we must put in place, a plan that's very aggressive. We must go hard at it and go early, because in order to really minimize the recession, we have to be very active and aggressive in putting in place as many strategies as we can. We see a significant increase in unemployment so far. People are hurting in terms of their needs, in terms of day-to-day supplies. So this is going to be long. We see tourism is closed. We don't, in my estimation, expect a real reopening of tourism until perhaps the fourth quarter after Thanksgiving, or just about around Thanksgiving, in my optimistic estimation. But certainly most business people are writing off 2020, and they're making plans for 2021. They're looking to see how they could survive during this period.
Well, Mr. Cooper, give us a snapshot of the key features of your party's economic recovery plan that you think will really help the Bahamas to get moving. One of the key things I'm presuming is to get money flowing in the country again.
Yes, absolutely. Absolute priority must be to ensure that we take care of the indigent, the poor, and the elderly, the unemployed. We must continue with the unemployment benefit assistance. We must continue with social assistance. The government's budget, indicated in the plan, is woefully understated. That is step one that we must focus on. Step two must be to assist small business in surviving, offering tax credits or tax deferrals, or offering loans through the Small Business Development Center. That program must be improved. The budget for that must increase as well. And then, of course, we must stimulate the domestic economy. And there are many ways to do this, and the government cannot do it alone. I've shared the plan that we've created with the Minister of Finance, because we're supportive, we're all a part of this economy. We're Bahamians first, and we want to ensure that we contribute. The government, the commercial banks, the central bank through its monetary policies, all of the stakeholders, business community, civil society, we all must participate. The government, though, has the lead obligation to get the money that's required to continue and stimulate the domestic economy. In our paper, we recommend local borrowing through bonds that could be specifically earmarked. We forecasted some US dollar borrowing to ensure that we restructure those foreign facilities, to ensure that there isn't an outflow of US dollars, but to protect our foreign reserves. Keeping the dollar 1-to-1 to the US is very important to all of us, and that is the desire, no doubt, of the central bank governor. We expect that that is going to continue. Then, of course, one of the things that we must do is engage the private sector through private-public partnerships. For example, those shovel-ready projects like the central bank building, like a new judiciary building, like a new parliament building, like renovating existing government buildings. Those can be done with money from the private sector. So what we are recommending is that the government work through with the private sector to get these projects on the go, which will hire more people, get more money in pockets, get more money spent at local convenience stores, flowing in the economy. The fourth prong really is to put in place some tangible efforts to ensure that once we recover, and we will recover, we will rebound, this will pass. When it passes, we must be stronger than before. So we must put in place some tangible initiatives to ensure that we're better, more productive, more competitive once it passes. things like digitizing the economy, to focus on telemedicine and e-commerce and e-government. And then we must look to see a specific plan how we reopen our country, have a plan that's ready for tourists, whether it means bringing in place equipment to properly screen tourists coming into our country. Those are the kinds of things that we must begin to focus on right now. Then, of course, fundamental is food security, and this is an opportunity for us to press the reset button on agriculture and fisheries and poultry. We must get on with those projects and those industries as well. The plan talks extensively about new industries. Those will come just after the crisis and as the economy begins to rebound. But certainly all hands must be on deck right now, working very diligently on taking care of the vulnerable, feeding the hungry, getting money flowing into the economy, ensuring that small business has the type of support in order to survive, as they hire 70% of the employees of our country. And then, of course, stimulating the domestic economy through new funding and setting priorities to direct that funding, making sure it's very transparent, make sure it's tangible, and making sure it is accountable. That, in a nutshell, is what we must seek to do. Then we must look to see how generally we can advance our country at a level where we see implementation of new industries, and I talk a lot about them. There's going to have to be a new deep dive into a lot of them: renewable energy, cannabis, the blue economy, green economy, shipping, the orange economy, pharmaceuticals in Grand Bahama. There are many low-hanging fruits that we must begin to really pick and harness right now during the crisis, so that when we are out of the crisis, we will be ready to go from day one. The government, of course, must cut its unnecessary spending and repurpose those spending into providing assistance for the vulnerable. That's very important.
Now, Mr. Cooper, what about tax reform? We've had some tax changes or amendments over the years, but what about, is this now, you think, perhaps a very good time for us to have real tax reform? And in the short term, what kinds of tax breaks can we give Bahamians when there isn't as much money, or isn't going to be as much money flowing?
Well, we cannot take anything off the table right now. But during this crisis, one of the important things that we must look to is to provide tax credits and tax deferrals for small and medium-sized businesses to ensure that they are able to survive and then thrive after the crisis. This will preserve the tax base for the government by ensuring that businesses survive and businesses continue to hire people. After the crisis, we must look at a thorough examination of our tax system, making sure it's equitable, making sure it's progressive. One of the things we reference is there's an opportunity to reduce the rate of VAT by eliminating many of the zero ratings. We've expressed our view on those zero ratings before. We believe the time has come for us to look at doing that. That will increase government revenues. It will ease some pressure in terms of the rate on the average individual and the business community. Then during this crisis, we must look to see whether there are some things that we ought to be removing duties from or reducing duties on. We must look at price control, for example, on medicines and across the board, as we're seeing some price gouging. But these are the kinds of initiatives that we actively should be looking at now and in the future. You ask for tax reform. That's a significant issue. It's going to require more empirical studies. But generally, I forecast there's an opportunity to reduce the rate of VAT, and I forecast there's an opportunity to reform business licenses, and also there's an opportunity to look at our corporate tax, which will help to facilitate our growth and development in financial services, as well as improve government revenues, as well as improve the equitable and progressive structure of our tax system.
Mr. Cooper, one last question, because this is obviously a prime environment for people who are paying mortgages to actually lose their homes. What can we do to try to prevent that?
Well, all banks have come out and they've said, if you find yourself impacted by this crisis, we will suspend your payments for 3 to 6 months. And I believe every Bahamian who was impacted, very few Bahamians would not be impacted, should seek out that help from their bank. The insurance companies are doing likewise. In addition, insurance companies are saying, if you cannot afford to pay your premiums, you should call us and we will be sure to work with you. We want to keep you as a client. We want to work with you. We want to ensure that you continue to be strong even after the crisis so that you will continue to be our client. The banks have taken that posture. Insurance companies have taken that posture. This is no time to be afraid to call your financial institution. This is no time to be ashamed. This crisis is not of anybody's making. I encourage every Bahamian who is impacted to seek the type of resources available to you, whether it's talking to your financial services company, or whether it's seeking support from the National Insurance Board, or whether it's seeking support from the Small Business Development Center. It's important that we be our brother's keeper. Every avenue that's available to you, the Bahamian people, you ought to seek it out to ensure that we make it through this transition as smoothly as possible. This is going to be a lengthy crisis. We haven't seen anything like this before. During 9/11, during the financial crisis, it was bad on the ground, but the world economy was open. Money continued to flow. Tourists continued to come at some level, but today our tourism count is zero. We've gone from 7 million a year to zero. We expect that this is going to continue for the foreseeable future. We will have some ongoing revenues from financial services and some of the other industries, but we must focus on driving the domestic economy and having an orderly approach to reopening domestic economy.
Chester Cooper, Deputy Leader of the Progressive Liberal Party, thank you so much for joining us.
I appreciate you having me, and I send out a shout to all of the healthcare workers and officials and thank them for their service to the country.
All right. Stay with us. We'll have more after the break.
Let's stay COVID-free. Remember the 3 S's. Sanitize, social distance, and stay inside.
Now you can watch the ZNS network of channels absolutely free. That's right, ZNS is now broadcasting 3 separate channels, free to air on Channel 13. One channel has the regular ZNS TV HD programming. One is the Parliamentary channel, and one is the 24/7 television community page. These channels may be accessed simply by attaching either a rabbit ears antenna or an indoor amplified antenna to the RF input connector on the back of your digital television or flat screen TV. Once the antenna is connected, select TV mode and choose Auto Scan, and your TV will automatically pick up Channel 13 at no charge. Once you're on Channel 13, just use the channel selector to go to each of the 3 ZNS free channels. Antennas are available on many sites online. Free TV, ZNS brings it back to you.
The Ministry of Health wishes to advise members of the public that prevention is key during this flu season. Practicing good cough hygiene can make the difference between you and your loved ones getting the flu or spreading the influenza virus. Good cough hygiene habits include covering your mouth and nose with a tissue when coughing or sneezing, and proper disposal of the tissue in a trash bin. Coughing or sneezing into your upper sleeve near your inner elbow and not your hands when a tissue is not available. Avoiding the use of handkerchiefs and towels as they hold germs, becoming a nest for the virus. and frequently washing your hands with soap and water, which is listed as one of the most important steps you can take to avoid getting sick and passing the virus on to others. If you have any questions about how to practice good cough hygiene to avoid catching or spreading the flu, contact your nearest community clinic or the Health Education Division at the Ministry of Health. This message is brought to you by the Ministry of Health in partnership with the Public Hospitals Authority.
Well, our next guest has been living in London for more than 30 years. She is a Bahamian who has served our country well as a diplomat, and she's been doing some amazing things ever since. Wendy McKinnon, how are you?
I'm fine, Julian. How are you?
Well, not so bad, you know, trying to deal with this COVID-19 thing. But what is the mood like in London right now?
I would say that we're cautiously optimistic. At the start of this pandemic, we were watching very carefully what was happening around the world, especially when it got to Europe through Italy, and that actually terrified us. We've actually had numbers of deaths rising in London, which made us even more afraid. However, it seems that we are finally getting to grips with it, to the extent that we're beginning to feel a little bit more optimistic.
Your government has now said that, the British government has said that there's going to be an extended lockdown. Dominic Raab, who is the Foreign Secretary, has announced that there is an extended lockdown for 3 weeks. What is the feeling about that? Because here, we're on lockdown every weekends now, and I don't know if it's going over very well.
Well, for us, we're still very cautious. I don't think that anyone really feels that we have a complete grip on this situation. We don't know the full extent of the numbers of infections or of people who have been infected in our communities. We still don't know that with 100% certainty, or as near as that is possible. So I think we are not unconcerned, but we're okay with the lockdown. We're happy to continue it, to extend it, because from our vantage point, we still have friends and not neighbors, close neighbors, but not too far away from where we actually live, that are coming down with the virus.
Wow.
So it is still very uncertain the extent that this virus is in the community, in different communities around Britain, and so we're not unhappy with the lockdown at all.
There's a thought that the British government might have moved a bit too slowly before they started to put in these strict measures. How do you feel about that?
I think being an international person who reads the news, and I have contacts and colleagues all around the world, I do believe that given what happened in China, what happened in the places that were first hit, South Korea, Singapore, Italy, Germany, and looking at how those governments dealt with the situation, I think, yes, we tend to believe that our government acted a bit slowly. However, the other side of that coin is you don't want to act irrationally. There has to be a measured response so that the public is not panicked. So it could be that that was one of the reasons they took careful and measured steps to deal with the virus. Having said that, I think there are still signs that we are moving too slowly. So, for example, the numbers of tests have not really, a number of testing of suspected cases, or even to see who might be infected in not just in the community, but also in our frontline workers, our nurses, our doctors. There's, and that to me is really crucial and an indication that we are not in control of it.
I understand that very much, and I've been seeing the concerns that healthcare workers have been saying about PPEs, and also the really significant numbers of healthcare workers who've died in the UK trying to help others. We've had one health professional that we know of who's died here, but we're now at 9 deaths and of course, and 54 cases. So you can imagine what that is for our small country. What about the measures like social distancing? Are Britons really taking advantage of that the way they should? Are they complying with that?
Absolutely. I think the cases that you hear about in the news are rare and they're far apart. But generally speaking, we have adopted the keep calm, carry on, but in lockdown. And it means that we don't go out unless we have to. We're allowed to go out for a walk once a day. We're allowed to go to the grocery store, the pharmacy, whatever, for essential needs. We're allowed to go and help a neighbor. But other than that, we should actually be staying at home. And for the most part, certainly in my neighborhood, and this entire borough of Barnet, which is quite large, people are very compliant. I think from what I've read and from what I understand, I have students and colleagues in Korea, South Korea, and Japan, and in China. And from what I understand, this is an essential part of containing the spread of the virus. So no lockdown should be considered likely. It is essential that people obey the regulations that are set during this pandemic. And I'm really happy to see that the Bahamas immediately went into taking such measures as lockdown, curfews. I know people aren't happy about it, and I know that it is very difficult for people like us Bahamians who love to be out on the beach and in the sun. I know it's difficult, but it is absolutely essential. Now, I think that is how the government here has been able to control, to some extent, the spread of the pandemic. And the idea of this is to ensure that the health services aren't overwhelmed by a large number of cases at once. And it's not to say that it's going to completely eradicate the virus or the spread of the virus, but it will control it so that we can, the health services can actually deal with it.
Wendy McKinnon, wonderful to see you. Please take good care of yourself, you, Gregor, Alistair, and Duncan. And we'll see you after COVID-19, eh?
Yes, I pray that you and your family and all of the Bahamas stay safe and well. Thank you so much. And
thank you.
Wonderful to see you.
Wonderful to see you, too. Wonderful to see you. That was Wendy Roll McKinnon, based in London. We'll have more after this.
Community page now has its own home on Channel 230. Be sure to tune into this channel to see informative notices, funeral announcements, birthday greetings, and much, much more. So watch the ZNS Community Channel today on Cable 230.
Finding hand sanitizer in the Bahamas these days is like finding the fountain of youth. But fortunately, John Watling's Distillery is doing a lot to actually make sure that we have enough hand sanitizer to go around. Now, with me is one of the managing partners there, Pepin Argamasia. Good afternoon, sir. How are you?
Good afternoon. How are you today?
Great. Well, first, congratulations on this effort to help the Bahamas out more during COVID-19 times. What prompted you to do this?
Well, I was looking on Facebook and on all the media going around the world, and it turns out that around 600 different distilleries globally have actually switched over from making spirits over to making hand sanitizer to basically fill the global demand. So at that point, I started talking to my business partner, and we decided that, hey, we have alcohol. There's no hand sanitizer within the country because, we're residents here too. And at that point, we just decided to make some. Went on the World Health Organization website and downloaded the recipe, found the ingredients here locally, and started, going through the different approval processes.
Right. How long have you been in production?
For the hand sanitizer, 48 hours.
48 hours, wow.
Oh, 48 hours, yes. It's been an interesting 48 hours.
and how much do you expect to actually put out during, let's say, a week? What kind of output do you expect?
Right now, today is our first labeling day. So we've been able to, our crew is doing around 400 or 500 bottles per hour. So again, it's just right now it's filling in the backlog, the pipeline, and hopefully that'll stabilize. So right now we're going to be working 24/7 and basically trying to get this out into the market within next week.
Now, how much will a bottle of John Watling's hand sanitizer cost you?
Well, right now we have just almost set the price. We actually, this whole process has been a little bit insane. We actually started manufacturing the hand sanitizer before even knowing what we were going to charge for it. But we're trying to keep it below what you would usually buy hand sanitizer for. Our intent is for this to get into the market. We're only doing 8-ounce sizes because we want more than less. To, again, go out into the market and as many people to be able to get it. So in that way, we can hopefully stop the spread of COVID-19 and hopefully one day everybody can get back to work and start building the economy again.
Now, you have a special distributor, don't you, for your hand sanitizer?
Yes, it's Hama's Medical Supplies. And if you give me a second, I can give you their phone number.
No, don't worry about that. We will provide that for people. Actually, I have it right here. It's 328-5057. But what else do you want to tell us about your efforts to help keep Bahamians COVID-19 free?
It's really not about our efforts. It's really about everybody else's efforts. I think, to everybody in the government, that when we came up with this idea, facilitated us to doing it, from Bahamas Customs that pushed through the receiving of the only product that we didn't find locally, which was glycerin, from people that we went out to when we were looking for the hydrogen peroxide, who had hydrogen peroxide, to a local bottle manufacturer, ARM Bottling. It's just been really a true community, grouping of trying to see how we can get this product done, how we can get it launched into the market, and how we can hopefully kill this disease.
And how different was the training for your workers to actually go from making rum and vodka to hand sanitizer?
Oh, it's been interesting because usually we're, with our rums, we're very, very meticulous. Extremely meticulous on the labeling. Everything that we do is handmade, et cetera, et cetera. So, when they were looking at the labels, and because everything's made by hand, So I told them that they could have a little bit of a leeway on the labels for the hand sanitizer as opposed to, what we do on our rum. So again, it's been great that they've actually risen to the challenge and have been just pumping this hand sanitizer out.
Great. Now, I know you said you've been in production for 48 hours, but how long does it take to produce the actual sanitizer itself? What are the elements that go into it?
Yeah, the actual sanitizer is basically a combination of alcohol at 70%. The alcohol we have here is at around 96%. So we dilute that down. You add hydrogen peroxide and glycerin, and that usually rests for around 48 hours. And then once that's done, then we have to go through the filling process. that everything's filled by hand, and then we have to go through the labeling process to put the appropriate warnings. One thing I do want to stress to everybody out there is, even though this has alcohol in it, you cannot drink it. Okay? You will get sick. It has hydrogen peroxide in it. So, this is to be used on your hands. I know a lot of people are thirsty out there, but, this product is not for drinking. Okay?
I think I'm very happy that you said that. Because some people are getting desperate.
Oh, yeah.
Well, Pepin Agamasia, thank you so much for joining us. And
thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much. Well, we want to thank you for joining us too, but please remember that the actual lockdown begins at 9 o'clock tonight, and it will end at 5 a.m. Monday. Follow the guidelines as best as you can, because all of these efforts together will really limit the spread of COVID-19 in the Bahamas, and then we can get back to a little bit more to what normal life was like. Have a good weekend.